Mikey, welcome to the World Class Dads podcast. Thanks for hopping on, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm
Yeah,
stoked we got to line this up pretty quick.
I know. We snuck it in right before it seems like the rest the rest of your quarter is blown up. So I
That's right.
appreciate you.
Heck yeah.
I was very excited when we got connected and that we could make this happen. But just for the listeners, real quick, if there's anybody who is tuning in who's not familiar with you, would you mind just giving a high level overview of kind of your background and what it is you're doing today?
Yeah, I started off as a pro skateboarder. I did that for about 15 years, which was 10 years longer than I anticipated. Uh, in the middle of my career, I started having interest in basically business. I wanted to become an entrepreneur, started my own brands, had a lot of success, no, not a lot of success, had success with one of them. Um, and was really into finance and investing along the way. Like having a short-lived career, you're very scared of the future.
hmm
So that was always a high priority of mine. When my career ended, I actually was able to become financially free, which was my ultimate goal, to not rely on sponsors to make money. And then from that point, I started a company to help other skaters in my industry transition out of skateboarding. And we focus on finances, financial literacy from an educational standpoint. And then we run 3 different real estate funds that people can partner with us on the deals that we have our money in. So our business is opportunity and education, with a hyper focus on athletes because that's where I came from. And then it ended up expanding, and now our investor base is really broad, but the athlete specifically is close to my heart.
That's awesome. So was a lot of that born based on the fact that, you were doing pretty well financially from the skateboarding side and you were looking for a way to somewhere to put that money? Or was it just really thinking about the future of saying this might only be 5 years?
It was a combination. The hard part is that we weren't making a lot of money. Like
hmm
skaters, pro skaters don't make anything. That's the first part. The second part is, we have, or let's say me specifically, I had a passion turn into a career. So I experienced loving my work,
hmm
uh, but it was terrifying at the same time because the clock was ticking and I didn't know when it was going to end.
Sure.
And so just that fear and, the uncertainty of the future mixed with what you kind of hear about athletes in general. It's like, we don't do well transitioning. The
hmm
rest of our life is typically not as cool as the moment in time where we were athletes. And I was scared of that. And so out of like a desperate run to try to figure out like what it was going to look like, I had somebody come into my life that basically started teaching me about finance, started teaching me about investing, and I listened to every word he had to say. And so my path was trying to become financially free on a budget. That was like the
mm
struggle for me. Um, and so the beginning, it wasn't even like, oh, I'm making millions. Where do I put money? It was, I'm making $40,000 a year. How the heck is this going to work?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like behavioral finance, personal finance was the foundation for me to try to build up enough cash to even put into investments. And then, 15 years later, I had a system that worked really well for myself.
Very cool. And so where in that time frame did kids come into the picture for you?
So I had my first daughter when I turned 30. 4 weeks later, we had her.
Okay.
So I was a pro skateboarder for about 4.5 more years after that.
Nice.
So we
So,
started our first business. We were about a year and a half into our first business. I was at the height of my career, and then baby came in.
so how did that shift things for you just from, as a single guy or married, but no kids, you have a certain level of flexibility in terms of where you're at, kind of time you're investing into your craft, into
Yep.
building a business at the same time. Kids flip that on its head a bit, as anybody who's gone through it knows. So what was that process like for you of having the
Uh,
kid and trying to figure out how to operate your time?
The beginning was devastating. It was just shocking. And I remember too, like we had her 4 or 5 days in, it's 3 a.m. I'm at like the top of my stairs. She's crying. I'm crying, looking around. I ruined my life. I ruined my career. It's all imploded. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
It's the first one is a shock because it
Mhm.
changes everything. And then it was like, this was in the middle of a big contest season. So, I'm 3 or 4 months away from having to go on a European like contest run.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, how am I going to manage this all? And the first contest I go to as a dad is in Spain. And no, I'm sorry. The first contest I go to as a dad was Brazil. And, I get to the contest, I'm skating around, and I see one of my friends who happened to be a dad as well, who was a pro skateboarder. His name's Chris Cole. And he locks eyes with me and he goes, dude, come here. And I'm like, what's up, dude? And he goes, oh, I've been where you're at. Are you okay? You in the dad fog? And I'm like, looking at him going, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this. How are you supposed to be a pro skateboarder and a dad at the same time? And he's just like, I remember he told me, he's like, look, it's going to get easier. Just, breathe. And then he goes, and now look around at all the other pro skateboarders at this contest. I look around and he goes, they seem like pussies now, don't they? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was just this new thing. Like, when I was just a pro skateboarder, it seemed like it was a piece of cake now.
Yeah.
And then of course,
funny.
like anything, it's like you get used to it, you start building your routine, you figure out how to make it all work. And then before you know it, you're able to operate on a higher level,
Mhm.
But that first blow, that was tough.
Oh, that's awesome. Laird Hamilton has a perspective on that as well, of like, anybody can be successful and operate at a high level without kids. I just want to see, once you do have kids, that's where you really see who can cut it.
It's a different thing. It is a different thing. But you know what was cool though is you go in feeling like not prepared. It's
Mhm.
very new for you. You're, at least myself, I surprised myself with how quick it just became natural for us.
Yeah.
That was a cool thing. Like, oh, I actually can operate on 5 hours of sleep. Whoa,
Right.
I actually could put more on my plate. Like I thought it was maxed out.
Yeah.
You throw a kid, you're in survival mode, and you're like, okay, I'm actually capable of a lot more.
Yeah. The other thing it did for me too was make me really evaluate what I was spending my time on. It was just had to get super honest. That this podcast didn't exist when I didn't have kids, obviously, but I was doing another podcast that I really enjoyed, and I had to sit down with myself and be like, dude, so you're going to spend X amount of hours, outside of work hours, because I'm working a full-time job. Is it moving the needle? And I just had to really answer that.
Very, very well said. I had to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well said.
I actually read an awesome article that you were featured in, I think on Medium, about balancing skateboarding and fatherhood. And one of the things that jumped out about it to me was somebody had asked you, I don't know if it was the author who wrote the piece, but if becoming a father made you less likely to try new tricks because of the, perceived risk of injury. And your response was, no, actually now you're trying more tricks because you had this new layer of motivation to nail it and really to deliver and be able to support your family. Can you talk about that a little bit? Just how it changed your perspective on motivation?
Yeah. So I think it happens one of 2 ways that you just explained. You're actually like freaked out because you have more responsibility, or you have a new drive. For me, there was more on the line. Like, prior to my wife, it was just about me. Basically, I was the only responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You get married, you have another person that you're responsible for, but I don't know why there's something different when you have kids. It's like, oh, I am like responsible for this person's future.
Right.
And for me, that was motivating. It was
Mm-hmm.
just like, I am now going to spend all my energy performing at the highest level because, I think it was 2 things. I kind of told myself, like, I want my kids to like see their dad giving it his all. And then the other thing I think too, there was a fear element involved.
Mhm.
It's like, and I think it all stems back from skateboarding, but you know, most people inside of skateboarding, when they get married or have kids, their career ends.
Hmm.
That becomes they just disappear. And so for me, you know, I want to say it was all about the kids, but there was a component where I was like, I will not be the person whose career fails just because I have new responsibility. And so I think I wanted to like prove the industry wrong, that my career could continue to go up even with kids. Uh, and I'll just give you this quick piece right now. Uh, that all came crashing down when my career ended.
Mm.
Like the thing about being a parent is when you become a parent, you don't realize how selfish you are until you have kids. When you add being a pro skateboarder on top of that, uh, it's a whole different type of selfishness. So my like, I think true balance and really figuring it out came when my career ended. But I remember in my career, it was like almost like I was masking the responsibility of a dad as my drive, but it was more selfishness. It was more I wanted to succeed with kids,
Mm.
you know?
Were you the sole income provider for your family at that point?
No, actually, my wife. So my wife is one of the things I was really attracted to my wife. Very, very smart, very, very driven entrepreneur, and so she started her own interior design business
Nice.
while we were dating, and then we got married. Still did it, and then when we had our first daughter, she continued to run her business until we had our second. And then when we had our second, it just became too much for her. And she felt like it was either the kids are going to have to sacrifice or the business is going to have to sacrifice. And she
Hmm.
chose the business sacrificing, which was a huge blessing for myself and all of us.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and the reason I asked that is I feel like that's, not most of us don't have a professional skateboarding career that they put in that place of kind of the in retrospect selfishness of wanting to achieve it there. But a lot of times it is the work front saying, okay, well, I'm gonna take on this role as provider, and so I'm really gonna bust ass, and if some things have to be sacrificed. But then, like you said, I think it's your introspection of saying, looking back, that was really just a level of selfishness that you didn't recognize.
100%. Yeah.
So maybe we
100%.
could jump forward, because obviously you still did it for 5 years, and while being a dad. Maybe we could jump ahead to when kind of what happened that your career came to an end, and from your own perspective, what you had to deal with there and how you came to that realization of how selfish you were being.
Okay, that's actually really good questions. So, my career came to an end very abruptly, and I wasn't expecting it. And basically, I had gotten hurt. I tore a ligament in my leg, and I was skating through it. I had skated
Mm,
through it for a full year, and it got to a point I was like, dude, this sucks. And so I talked to my main sponsor at the time and basically tried to figure out what the best time to have the surgery was. And and when we had this conversation, I had about 2.5 years left on my contract. And so I was like, hey, look, you want me to take care of this now? I'm out 6 months and then I'll skate, the next 2 years and then we'll figure out if there's a deal after that. Or would you rather me just skate for the next 2.5 years and I'll have surgery after? And I was willing to tough it out. And they were like, no, 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 like all good, dude. Fix your leg.
mm-hmm.
Let's go. I'm like, all right, cool. So I have surgery December, end of December. By February 1st, they found a loophole in my contract and ended my deal.
Oh man.
And so, I'm sitting on the couch. I can't walk, still on crutches, and all of my income goes away overnight. And so that was tough.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
I bet.
that was it's going to end, especially as an athlete. Your career is going to end, but we think it's going to end on our own terms, or that
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be able to say, all right, I did everything I wanted to do. Thank you, everybody. Get some praise and I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Never works that way. So there was that challenge. And then what happened probably about 6 months after that was I didn't realize how uh, distressed my marriage was,
Hmm.
and I didn't know uh, how bad of a dad I was actually being until my career ended. So, and it all happened at once. It was like loss of identity. I felt like loss of purpose at the time. And then every other aspect of my life, it was like, oh, wow, all of those are failing. I was only succeeding in one place. And I just didn't see that when I was skating. I
Hmm.
was so focused on being the most successful skateboarder I could be. And my gift and curse is I become very tunnel vision, obsessive, focused. This is all I'm going to do. And when you have that, it's good to succeed at the one thing. It's hard to make sure the other things around you are succeeding as well.
So where do you go from there then? Income's gone. You realize these different pieces of your life are kind of in disarray. What was the action, Mikey's action plan?
Oh, well, you know, it took time. It's like they say, dude, when it rains, it pours, right?
Yeah, right.
And truthfully, I went into survival mode. It was
Hmm.
like, what is the first thing I need to tackle? And uh, it believe it or not, it wasn't my wife, it wasn't my kids. And the reason I say that is I couldn't give the way I needed to give to my wife if I was broken.
Hmm.
And I was. It was like I didn't know who I was anymore. So basically, I had to address those two issues: who am I and why am I here? Identity and purpose. And once I basically figured that component out, then it was like, ah, this is why everything's been failing. And then
Hmm.
it became fix my relationship with my wife, and then it became uh, start learning how to be a good dad. you know.
Yeah. Was
So
it
that was the list I took.
awesome? Was it mainly like the time component that was causing the trouble on the family side? Just you weren't around because of skating?
It, that was a component of it. I think like at the deepest point, it was that my wife and my kids came second, but it was a distant second.
Mm.
So my whole world was based around how do I perform at the highest level? And then you add the obsessiveness, and it was like, I mean, dude, I would skate every day, all day. I did that for 25 years. I never missed a day. I was like the dude who always had to find the new kids coming up so that they would be trying to skate at the frequency I was. And so, really good for a pro skateboarding career, really taxing for a relationship. And then
Sure.
when you added traveling into it, I was gone about 6 months of the year.
Mm.
So when we had my daughter, the first one, it was okay because I just flew my wife and my daughter everywhere. Like, my oldest, she was on like 41 flights before she was one. She had the baby passport, the whole nine, right?
Wow.
When we had our second, they couldn't come. It was just too crazy.
Mhm.
So now my wife is pretty much being a single mom, raising both kids, while dad is gone 6 months of the year. And even when I'm home, I wasn't home. All of my, it's one thing to be at a dinner table, eating and having conversation. It's another thing being there and thinking about your skate career.
Yeah.
So that was at the core of it. And then uh there was a lot more for just the years of being in a relationship that like kind of compounded on itself.
Sure. So I feel like it's a lot of those challenges can also apply to entrepreneurs and running a business. So once you kind of turn the page, obviously you had already started dabbling in entrepreneurship, but kind of turning the page away from your pro skateboarding career and going all in on business. Was that something you had to address or really take a conscious approach to not go down that same path, just focusing on the business instead?
Yeah, yes. So my business now is a lot different than the businesses I have had in the past.
Mm.
And basically, I started creating businesses while I was still skateboarding. And I had this realization that I skate more than everyone else. So
Hmm.
I was like, you know what? If I give 40% of the time I'm dedicating towards skateboarding, and put that into business. So I have a 60-40 blend, right? The 60% that I'm focusing on skateboarding is still more than everyone else. It was like that mentality, right? Not healthy for a relationship. So basically what ended up happening is when my career ended, I went from being very driven, always happy, full of confidence to who is this guy?
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, I was like, I need to get back to like the normal Mikey. I need to get back to the Mikey who was just like nothing can get in his way. He's good to go, you know?
Yeah.
And I knew I had a skill that would translate beyond skateboarding because we had already created business while I was skating. So I
Mm-hmm.
had confidence that I could succeed. It was like I didn't even know where to deploy the skills.
Right.
And so in the beginning, it was like, okay, I need to start a new company so that this company can become my identity so that I could feel good again and then go out and succeed. And as I'm kind of, you know, going down the rabbit hole of starting new companies, I got really, really close to launching one. I was going to do a shoe brand. And I got to the point where business plan was done, pitch deck was done, samples from China, the whole nine. And I'm looking at these shoes and going, what the hell am I doing? I don't care about shoes. I'm doing this because there's something missing inside. And for me, that was the moment where I went, something's broken and I need to like figure out what's really at play here. And for me, it was getting to faith. For me, it was like when I had to answer the identity and purpose, who am I? Why am I here? The why am I here had to go back to where did this all begin? And I had to know, why am I even on this planet? Why do I even have these skills? What is the point of my life? And that is what led me to faith, to then building a real relationship with God so that I then understood my purpose, my identity, and then ultimately my destiny. When that happened, everything changed for me. And that's when I was able to then address what was happening with my wife. And what was happening is I wasn't putting her first. I was putting me first. And so starts with realization. Then you start going through change, and it was slow. But what was cool is with our relationship, we were basically at rock bottom. It was 7 years being married. Relationship was not working. We're basically in a winter season, and my wife goes, "We're going to go on a marriage retreat." I'm like, "All right, cool. Like, let's go." 3 days of that, we go up there and the speaker is talking all about love language, right? It's a guy who wrote the book, 5 Love Languages. And that was eye-opening for both of us because it was like, oh, okay, here's like a big component that I've been missing. I talk to you the way that I want to be loved. And you talk to me the way you want to be loved. Well, we are polar opposites when it comes down to that. Like, I love words of affirmation, right? Yeah. I love when she says, "I love you. You're doing great, blah, blah, blah," right? She loves quality time. Well, quality time happens to be my lowest one. And so we're in this cycle where she doesn't feel like she's getting quality time from me. Hence, I'm a pro skateboarder, gone all the time. She then doesn't give me words of affirmation. We don't feel like we are operating at the way that we should. And just that little switch, we then, started going to counseling, started working on all these things. We go to that same marriage retreat a year later, and marriage has 4 seasons typically. Same way we have 4 seasons. And we went from being in a winter season, which was as dark as it gets. I thought it was as bad as it could get, to the following year, dude, we were almost in summer. It was like just in a year span, we were experiencing a whole different type of relationship, which was very encouraging because, as you know, in marriage, it's always about cycles. You have moments where it's high, you have moments when it's low, and you have a lot of time in the middle. And working through a moment where it was broken, to then experiencing what it's like when you put in the work to then build something successful, where we're at now is higher than any other point in our entire relationship, which was encouraging because now we know the next time we get to this point, which will happen, right, and we get into another winter season, we know what it feels like to get through that, what it is to experience the other side. So that was really encouraging for us. And then when it came to business, I knew that I needed to create a business that was successful in my total life, not just the business element. And that was different and challenging. And there's areas where I still have to work on it, but this is a totally different thing now than what I've done in the past. And I think to answer your question, kind of going on rants here,
I love
I
it.
had to include my family in it. That was the big difference. Like prior to this business, I made all the decisions financially. I made all the investment decisions. When I started a new company, I didn't include my wife in really any of it. And with this company, I talk to her all the time. This is what I'm doing. I'll show her either a new project that we're moving forward on, maybe a new video, and get her feedback. Anytime I make an investment decision, she is part of that discussion now, so that it's us doing this, not just me and her basically being in the dark. And then, even with how the business is structured, I cannot wake up, work on my business until the time I go to bed and abandon my kids and my family. So that meant I had to learn how to become good at delegating, become good at building a team, and become good at letting go of control. And the fascinating part is this business is, one, unlike any other business I've done in the past because of that element. Two, what's happening with our business from a growth standpoint is out of this world. It's like one of those things like, wait a minute, the second I give up control and I don't try to basically kill myself in it and I build a team, now it's even more successful. What the heck is going on?
Yeah.
So there was a lot there, but what you're talking about is something that took a lot of time to work out, and there's still elements where we are working it out.
No, I appreciate you going into the depths there. And I was actually just talking to another dad about the podcast, and one of the pieces of feedback I got is he's like, I wish we could just have a full podcast about that shadow, the winter seasons, because all of us face it. And I think that men are, more open to talking about this stuff than our parents, our dads were, and our grandparents especially, but it is still just not something that is talked about nearly enough, is our shadow sides, those hard winter, seasons of life where we're just in the shit and don't know how we're going to get through it. So I really appreciate you sharing that, sharing how you came to faith and then started to rebuild from the ground up. And it takes time, like you said. So from one area of that I really want to focus in on for a second is the time management and really how you now approach balancing or integrating work and family. I know you mentioned delegation is a big piece of that, but how do you think about, that work-life balance or integration with the new business?
Okay, I should hedge, and if somebody hasn't picked up on this by now, you could see what my weakness is. It's also my strength, the obsessive part, the driven part. That is still my challenge today.
Which I should say is, I think, why, like, the folks who listen to the show, that's what it's all about, is they have that drive and they're trying to figure that piece out too. That's why I started. So we're all there.
Perfect. So basically, I look nothing like I did 5 years ago, but that is still our biggest fight with my wife and I, is the time.
Yeah.
So basically what changed with me is, one, this idea that, and I think our parents, it was just that generation, that you have to work hard to succeed, which is true. It absolutely is true. But how I perceived that was, I need to do it all, and I need to be grinding and working it, and then I'm going to, be successful.
Yeah.
That part is not true. The harder you work does not mean the more money you make. And so now we get into this like smart money or smart working, right? And so it sounds easy saying, okay, you know what? Instead of me spending my time doing everything, who could I put in place to free up my time and put in somebody that is better than me at doing that one thing, right? That sounds easy. The hard part is the control element. Wait a minute. I'm taking my hands off this, and somebody else is responsible for this one. And dang, they take the praise for it. You do actually put them up to succeed.
Right.
That's actually not easy. It wasn't easy for me in the beginning. It was like, I wanted the praise, and I didn't want to take responsibility for like anyone else's mistakes. That's the very selfishness, ego component speaking. I really had to learn that one.
Mm,
And so basically what changed was me understanding what I was really good at and what I wasn't good at. And prior to this, like me working on ego, I thought I was good at everything. Like
mm.
seriously, I was like, I could do it all. So not true. So not true. A lot of things I am really bad at. So basically, the things that I am really bad at, I don't even try to master anymore. It's just like, who can I put in this place? And then what ends up happening is even things that I am, pretty decent at, it then switched to what am I the best at? What is the best use of my time? And that's where I need to be focusing my energy. And
Mm,
even though I can do these other things, I need to put people in place that are the best at this.
mhm.
And it really comes into team building. It's like switching from this is about me to this is about us. And I think that was hard for me because I was a pro skateboarder. It really was just all about me and what I wanted to do.
Right.
Uh, but once I understood this idea that it's all about team, it's all about who you surround yourself with, then the sky's the limit on what you can do, because it's not on your shoulder to be the best at everything. And then you no longer lose the time of having to educate yourself to be good at one thing. It's just simply, who can I put in place that is the best at that? And now all of a sudden you're writing off them being the best.
Yeah.
And then they're writing off every other person being great at what they're doing. And then the business as a whole just starts moving at a pace that it was different than anything I've experienced.
Well, I
Does
love
that
how
make
you,
sense?
yeah, and I love how you break it down because I feel like that concept is often like maybe not even explained, but you hear that a lot. Like you need to build a team, you need to focus on what you're really good at, but it's not always put in that context of somebody who's starting off in a position where they have to do everything, or when you come from a 15-year professional career of doing everything to transitioning to that. That's a lot harder when you're not used to that,
Yeah.
and you've succeeded at the highest level doing it the other way.
And there is another component, is resources, right?
Hmm.
It's like when you're first getting started, you don't always have the resources to pull all these people in,
Right.
right?
Right.
You're barely scraping by to make money to support yourself when you start these things. If you're starting it yourself, if you get to the point where you're raising capital, it's a little bit different of a structure, but a
Hmm.
lot of times you just don't have the money to bring great people on. So in the beginning, there is this element where, yeah, you're all wearing multiple hats. There's no way around it.
Right.
But really, I think the thing for everybody to really be mindful of is, as the company starts making more money, don't pay yourself more.
Hmm.
Use that money to then bring people on. So the idea of delaying gratification, that's where it starts getting powerful, because your company is going to make more. But you know how we are. We make more, we spend more. So
Right.
how do we not spend more? How do we not selfishly take more and give that to others?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then what ends up happening is you make more money on the back end, right? It's like, I heard somebody say this the other day that was awesome. There's two ways to make money, now or later. And
Mm,
usually when you make money later, it's a way larger amount. So
mm.
that really applies with building business.
That's fascinating. No, yeah, turning that into an investment rather than just income.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
That's right.
sense. So, kind of taking it back just to the family side and being a parent, are there any other things that you picked up just in your skating career that impacted your, like, how you parent, your kind of style as a dad?
Yeah, I would say, well, the one area from skateboarding that is definitely a part of my parenting is how the kids view fear and
Mm,
how the kids speak to themselves. So I had to learn how, like, my mom's the best, totally the best. Don't take this as my mom did something wrong. She was the best, but my mom was more of a fearful parent, and so that
she
wears
must have
off
loved
on
having
kids.
a skateboarding.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So when I became a pro skateboarder, that was my challenge: is how do I figure out fear? Because I feel like I'm more scared than everyone else.
Mm,
And so I started working really. I started putting in a lot of time working on how I spoke to myself, how to, uh, build a new relationship with fear so that it's not in front of me, but it's, maybe at the side of me. And so I'm really big on that one with the kids. Really big on just, something as simple as like, my kids love saying, I can't do this, right? They love that. I can't do this. Now my kids know if one of them says, I can't do this, I go, what did you just say? And then the other one goes, yet. You can't do this yet, right? It's just little things like that that don't stop you,
right?
That give you a path to then later being able to do it. When my kids fall, that's a big one. Hey, get back up. We're going to try this again. It is okay to fall. Falling is part of the process. That's big. And then I think like on the entrepreneurship, at least in my parenting, I am being mindful of educating them on how to create, how what it looks like to like they're all big on like selling lemonade, right? They're 8 and 6. We want to go do lemonade. And they're young, but I understand this idea that you have to pay for the materials. And then when we sell it, we can sell it for more than we paid for the materials. And that's our profit, right? And trying to speak that into an 8-year-old, it's very fun and difficult, but stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too is like, the biggest realization I had as a parent is that my kids don't listen to me. They don't care about what I say. They care about what I do. They're watching me like crazy.
Yeah.
So, just being really mindful that I need to live the life I'm talking about, not just tell them, hey girls, what would be the newest example? Like my kids, like at the dinner table, right? Like our big thing is like when we're at the table, we're talking, we're seeing each other, and my kids will just be like, out of the table, run out, and they're like playing. And they get that because somebody calls me and I pick up my phone and I walk away and have, and it's like, oh, they are paying attention. That phone goes away, lead by example. So that's kind of, I think, the biggest one.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And I just want to talk a little bit on the fear piece, because I'd love to know kind of what that conversation is like with kids at those age to help them overcome that, especially since you kind of came from that mindset of being more fearful. And then clearly you had some success in talking yourself out of the, out of the fear to perform at the levels that you did in the skateboarding world and in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's right.
So what are the type of things that you talk to them about? Like, how do you instill that in them to how to think about fear?
Well, I think it's just to me, there's kind of two components to fear. There's failure. That's a big one. And that's probably where I see in my oldest more than my youngest. And you remember, the kids are different. So you kind of have to take a different strategy. My oldest daughter hates when she doesn't do things. Like, she's such a perfectionist, but if she doesn't get it first try, she's frustrated beyond belief, right? So it's just when you see that moment, I just take the approach of building her up. Babe, this is part of the process. You messing up means that you get to do it again and improve, right? Like, trying to like teach her to enjoy the journey, not the end result. And then even when she gets up and does it, like if I see like a part where she's frustrated, I'm hyping her up. Babe, that was awesome. Are you kidding me? Look what you just did. That was better than the time before. And switching her from seeing what she did wrong to what she improved on. And that is going to be her struggle. You could already tell. She is like me. She wants to be perfect at everything. She's frustrated when she's not, right? My younger daughter, that's a different thing. She's scared to even try. And I think it's because she's scared of getting hurt. So like, when she spills, like, dude, they're like roller skating now, right? If she takes a slam, she falls and you could see it in her face. And it's just like, babe, great job. I know that was like a little bit scary, but look, we're fine. Let's get back up. Let's do it again. And almost make falling like, okay, right. Like praising the falling almost. And that's kind of the approach I'm taking with her.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. Is there any advice that if you were talking to, yourself right before your first daughter was born, or even a new dad, that is one thing that you would really want to instill right at the beginning of that fatherhood journey?
For me, It would have been, uh, your life is not over. And there's going to be moments, and let me think of the way I can articulate this correctly. There's windows of parenting, and that might be 3 weeks or 3 months or 9 months or a year. And you'll find yourself going, it's going to be like this forever. It never is. So if you feel like the walls are coming in and it's never going to improve, before you know it, it's easier. And then it's easier, and then it's easier. So if you were like me and you're like, how am I going to do this? There's no chance. You will be able to do it. Just give it time. When it comes to parenting, time is your friend.
Yeah.
So have grace on yourself, I guess I should say.
I love that. Is there, are there any examples of that jump out of your mind where you really needed that advice in the moment?
Oh, I mean, I think the big one for us is like when I told you I was sitting on the stairs, basically crying, thought I ruined my life. So we had with our first one, breastfeeding was a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And so my daughter had a tongue tie. We're brand new parents. We're 3 nights in. And I remember every time my wife would feed, she'd have to grab my hand, squeeze as hard as she could, screaming as she, right? And it was like, I remember this moment, like, we're screwed. We are so screwed.
Yeah.
Right. And you remember too, in the beginning, you're not used to not having sleep.
Right.
You're exhausted as well.
Yeah.
And being tired just heightens that emotion. And it's very easy to go, it's going to be like this forever.
Yeah.
And just like, I think if somebody would be like, hey, dude, first 3 days are going to be tough. And that's a milestone. Then you're going to get to 3 weeks, and then you're going to get to 3 months. And for some reason you get to 3 months, it gets easier and you could breathe. And then that keeps happening. That would have helped in those late nights where I'm like, it's over.
It's so true. I mean, those first couple of weeks are honestly such a shit show. You're seeing things that you had no idea human bodies were capable of, or doesn't seem like they should be doing. And there's this I just think back on those days. My wife and I were just lamenting because it was about a year ago when we would just be pacing our whole house for hours on end, from the hours of like 2 a.m. till whenever. And it's just like, how do you get through it? But you're right. It always seems to pass. Somehow you get through it.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Thank God.
Yeah. Right. And then you forget it somehow and do it again.
100%. That's absolutely right.
Yeah. I think that's a human mechanism.
How many kids do you guys have?
So we have one. She's about 13 months old. So we're just getting started here.
So basically the good thing for anyone who has one kid, having 2 and then 3 is a different thing. It's you don't go through the experience of like, I ruined my life. You don't have that shell shock. It's just crazy on top of the crazy. Yeah. Which for me was better. Yeah. So like having a second was way easier than having one. And then having number 3, I think was the easiest out of all of them.
That's good to know. I feel like I've heard 3 is tough because you can't play man-to-man coverage anymore, is what I've heard from some people.
That's true. At least how we did it, we spaced them out. So our goal is 4. So we did 2 tight gap, and then we're doing 2 more tight. And so I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. Like they're sufficient now. So nice. When the baby, we got to do the infant thing. Yeah. We're not trying to wrangle 3 infants anymore. It's just 1. And then it'll be 2, but we got the 2 down now. So that's our attack. That's our plan of attack. Yeah.
I love the strategy there. That's some good family planning strategy there.
Yeah, that's right.
Mikey, anything else that you would impart just on dads, and especially driven dads who are trying to figure this out?
Yeah, I would say and this is like, I had this realization like about a year and a half ago, that our biggest, we feel like our biggest responsibility is providing. Mm-hmm. I actually changed my perspective on that. I think our biggest responsibility is building these kids to be leaders, making an impact in their life. And when I had that realization, I changed my purpose with them, my intention with them. And it was like, okay, it's not just about like putting clothes and food, having clothes and putting food on the table. It's How do I help build you to succeed, and
Mhm.
not only succeed, make an impact in your community? And just that, like, kind of mind change, I guess,
Yeah.
uh, has changed the amount of energy I'm putting towards them. So it's like, I think I would say, for especially driven dads, treat your kids like you treat your business.
Mhm.
How do I build these kids up to succeed in every aspect? How do I build them to be leaders? And dude, you end up putting way more time, at least for me, into the things that matter. It's not so much like, oh, let's take them to the park. They're playing and I'm on my phone, right? It's like
Right.
being intentional, like, how could I give them an example of a situation that just happened?
Hmm.
Right? Kid took a toy, whatever it is. How could I speak on them in a way that they could take this experience and then know how to, navigate successfully through it moving forward? A big one for us right now is like trying to see where this moment is kind of going to take us as far as society or culture goes.
Right.
And I think a big thing on my mind right now is, in this age of information, right? Which is awesome. Like, it's so cool how accessible information is.
Hmm.
The challenge is, and I think what the skill set for people that are going to succeed moving forward is, how do you discern through this information to find truth,
Yeah.
right? And so something that we're spending a lot of time on with our kids is listening or hearing information, doing research on that information, formulating your belief system, and then being able to articulate that belief to others, right?
Wow.
And so that, I think, and they're young, so you got to remember, like, you got to introduce things as you go. But I think that's like really what we're going to be focusing on for the next 10 years with them.
Yeah.
And I'm, at least for what I'm seeing the future look like, uh, I think if you are confident in your beliefs, which seems to be a weakness for people right now,
Hmm.
and you're able to communicate those beliefs and actually know why you believe them, I think that's going to be a recipe to uh, do a lot of good things in the future. So that's kind of where my energy's at with them right now.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think it took me, I'm 31 years in and I'm still figuring some of that stuff out. So you're way ahead of the curve with introducing it to them. That's amazing. I love it.
You, you know what? I didn't have it either, right? And this age of information's new for me as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing what's going on around us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Everybody
Yeah.
says everything and no one knows why the hell they're saying it. So it's like,
Yep.
okay, if our kids are going to be the new leaders, is that challenge going to be heightened or multiplied? And so how do you build them up to navigate through it? That's my
Yeah.
thought.
Oh, 100%. Especially in a world with deep fake where there's videos that look 100% real and it's something nobody ever recorded or said.
That's right. That's
So,
absolutely right. Absolutely right. Or
like,
maybe the new strategy is like teach these kids how to fight robots, man. I don't know. We'll
that's,
see.
yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll do another one next year and that may be
Yeah,
the topic.
totally.
um, Mikey, I really appreciate you coming on, man. Is there anywhere you'd point listeners if they want to check out what you've got going on or I know you put a lot of excellent content out there. Where can people find you?
So you can pretty much find me on every platform, at Mikey Taylor. Uh, the two kind of drivers are Instagram and TikTok. And then I just got on Clubhouse like 2 weeks ago. And I think Clubhouse is actually going to be a pretty big one too.
Hmm.
So maybe one of those three. And if you find one, though, if you find my Instagram, you'll be able to find everything else.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we'll have that all linked up too in the show notes,
Thank you.
worldclassdads.com. But hey, I appreciate you coming on and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you so much.
Brad, thank you, man. It's a pleasure.